Dr. Jazz. Dr. Jazz.
Yeah, that's true.
I got my congas upstairs, but these are my djembe.
That's it.
Did that come through okay? Could you hear it?
Oh man, that was beautiful. Well, my personal 9 p.m. Friday concert.
Yeah, that's a nighttime for you.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful.
It's a happy groove, man. That's my sixth groove.
Yeah, beautiful. Nice to hear that.
Yeah.
How are things?
I doubt if I could say talk anything as good as that. You know, we'll see.
Oh
Probably
man.
not.
No, music.
I'm playing mostly hand drums these days.
Oh really?
What's that?
Really? I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, I love them, man. It's so direct. Nothing between you and the drum.
More personal,
and the congas
right?
I got upstairs, but they're too big to carry down. But man, whoo! I got some new ones. The Giovanni Galaxy Conga. Man, wow! Yeah. I love these drums, man. I don't even want to play the drum set. There's just so much. I love the sound of them so much. They're really like they're better than I deserve, but they're elevating me. They're bringing me up.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
right?
like, yeah, there's something else, man. So I'm gonna record on them soon.
Ah, seriously?
Yeah, I've already recorded on congas, but I had my previous roommate was a drummer, a student, very nice cat, talented cat, and he had some congas, some LP congas, just two of them, and they were they sounded good, but they were like the student model, but they sounded fine, and I recorded on them a lot already.
Oh wow.
Mishoma, I did a drum remix. I put congas on it, but then he moved and he took them, and I've been wanting anyway to get this Giovanni set, which is his drums was like a nice upright piano.
Yeah.
These drums are like a Steinway grand 12-foot, you know, they're like the tone, oh man.
Yeah.
I'm still learning. You know, I've been watching a lot of conga players lately, you know, to just for inspiration, even though it's not my goal to play like salsa, Afro-Rican, Afro-Cuban stuff. I love it, you know, and I learned from watching these cats, but I play my own stuff.
Yeah.
You know, but I like the sounds. And those are what I just played now, those are djembes.
Djembe, yeah. Beautiful.
But I play my own stuff, you know. People sometimes say, well, that sounds like African drums. And I say, well, thank you. You know, I'll take that as a compliment because so many great drummers, drumming comes from Africa. Really.
Yeah, sure.
But it's not, though. It's just me. I'm just making some shit up.
I love what you did, you know, like changing the triplets and going straight. And I love this stuff. This is so beautiful. It's like you going from the drums to the djembe. It's like, you know, beautiful stuff. So.
Yeah, well, you know, there's a lot of advantages to it. I think it's really improved my playing because the one thing about the drum set is that you have 4 limbs.
Yep.
So it's much easier to do polyrhythm because I'm thinking the right hand, dang, 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 left is a boom, boom, the bass one, boom, 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 and then the hi hat, and so it's more, right? And so now I'm only using 2 hands. But I want it to sound like 4.
Yeah, exactly.
So my hands are getting better. And even when I'm playing 4, I usually want it to sound like more than one guy.
Yep.
A lot of the records that I'm making these days, I overdub. So I do several of myself.
Oh, seriously? Oh, wow.
Yeah, why not?
Sure.
And when I'm lucky enough, like we did 2 with, actually 3. The third one isn't out yet. We did 3 with Tisziji and Billy Hart and myself.
Really? Wow, I didn't know that.
Me
Wow.
playing with Billy Hart. Oh, you should hear this stuff. That's what I'm telling you. You should hear my stuff before you do the interview. But okay.
I've heard so much. I listened to.
I'm sure you. I'm teasing you. I'm just messing with you, man.
I didn't know with Billy that you played, so I didn't know that one. So.
Twice, man. And the latest one is called Immortal Drumming.
Oh,
actually.
okay. I'll check it out.
And so I love playing with Billy. There's the other drummer, Sadubav, who plays with Tisziji. We often play 2 drums, and he's great. So, you know, in compos back in the early days, it was me and Jack DeJohnette and Juma Santos. So we had sometimes 3 drummers going. Wow. So yeah, I like playing with a lot of drummers, and when I don't have a lot of drummers, I'll overdub on myself when I'm recording sometimes. Yeah. And I have a lot of instruments upstairs. Maybe you've seen pictures of my full set. Yeah. But I don't have the computer set up for that to film up there. I wish I did. But
no, I just listened today to when Coltrane calls this session 1 and your solo on that Lonely's Lament, man, the midsection.
Oh, okay.
Man.
I don't even remember that. I got to go back. Thank you for reminding me that. I sent you one this morning, too, from Free Freedom. Or maybe it wasn't the morning for you, but...
yeah, the birthday bash you're on.
Yeah. That's just one drum, so you know that's how we usually do it. But no, I like playing with more than one drums. And when I was in Europe last time, we did one gig with Tupac Mantilla, the percussionist from Colombia.
Oh wow!
And me and him have a really magical connection. We made a record together too that called Mother Sky. That's a duet percussion record that's like no other percussion music I ever heard. And he's living in Hamburg now, so he joined us for our first gig. And that was the best. All the gigs were good, but I think we did 4 or 5, but that was the best one, the one that had Tupac. And again, it made it more drum-centric. So I do like tribal drumming or teamwork in drumming. And so... you know, you heard me just playing the djembe, but I was already trying to sound like more. Yeah. You know, so it's more conceptual.
Yeah. Did you already from the beginning? Like, was that, you know, I mean, I know you from the records, you know, from the 70s and 80s and your records, but like already when approaching your playing always seemed so open in a way, and also thinking like several drummers, even though you're not playing them sometimes, you know, if you know what I mean. Was that always your approach, like this, thinking like several drums in a way, or? Well,
you know, maybe. I mean, I just like the sound of it, you know. I think the drum set in itself, even one drum set, is an attempt for one person to sound like more.
Yeah.
Because like if when I went down to New Orleans and I heard this, I went to this club in the hood. I was the only white guy in that place, but the music was great. It was the Rebirth brass band.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I love those.
Rebirth, kind of like the Dirty Dozen, but maybe even more raunchy in a way. They're more powerful, I think. But they're both great. There's a few like that down there. Anyway, there's a guy playing snare drum, somebody else playing bass drum, somebody else playing tambourine, maybe somebody with a cowbell. And you put it all together, it's amazing. And one advantage of that is, imagine the guy on playing bass drum, that's all he's got to play. Imagine how good that bass drum is, like every note, the nuance and the right dynamics and because that's his only job. And the guy playing snare, that's all he's got to do. But then we put it on drum set and we got the bass and the snare and the hi-hat, we got cymbals, we got tom-toms. In my case, I got all kinds of drums. And all different kind of foot combinations. So the drum set already is an attempt to be more.
It's basically several drums, right? I mean.
Yeah. Well, I used to play in a Scola de Samba, and there again, you have the hipanik, which is like the lead guy. That's like a timbale sound. You've got the snare drummers. You've got the go-go bell. You got actually 3 different pseudo parts. With the main pseudo is like the bass drum. That's kaboom, kaboom. But the snare part is and you put it all together, and you get this very powerful rhythm thing. But then again, if you hear a drummer like Robertino Silva, like the Max Roach of Brazilian drumming, he sounds like a whole Escola de Samba on the drum set.
Sure.
Or at least not quite, but he implies it.
I know what you mean.
And so that's an innovation, But then again, I also, I think when I saw him play with Nascimento many years ago, he also had his 2 sons playing percussion.
Oh yeah.
So there was like 3 drummers, and they were all badass. The kids were badass. Badass, and they had a huge, because Milton has some money behind. He's pretty well known. They had a lot of stuff, a lot of drums, a lot of different sounds. That music was very beautifully orchestrated, but drums. The first gigs I ever played was playing in salsa band.
Oh really? I didn't know that. Seriously?
Yeah, but I was playing vibes.
Oh yeah, like with Rahsan, right? In the first.
Yeah, vibes was really my first instrument. At first, I ever gigged on. But I met these Puerto Rican guys, and they loved the vibes. The Latin people love the vibes, man. We had Tito Puente played the vibes, and Cal Jader, and there's a bunch of vibes in Latin music, And so I got to play with these cats, and the leader was a cunguero, and he was very good. He was a showman too. He would flip the cunga between legs and do all this shit. But there was also a timbale guy. There was cunga, timbale. Maybe one guy on the bongos. Usually one of the horn players would play clave.
Yeah.
All the horn players had percussion. There would be a shekere, and all I had to do was solo over the stuff. But this is funny too, because they'd had no charts. They all learned the music from the radio. These are like hit songs on the radio, see? And I don't know, what I'm doing. So I remember there was a guitar player on one of the gigs, and I asked him, I said, what key? And he just smiles at me. The only guy who spoke English was the cunguero, and I don't think he knew what key. So he just smiled at me. So for the beginning of the tune, I'd have to go up the chromatic scale and it's in
figure out
until I found it. And then usually soloing was pretty simple, 1 chord or 2 chords.
Yeah, sure, it's the same.
So I soloed a lot, and I realized part of that was because, we used to play 8 sets a night. Can you believe that? 8 sets. We start at 8 o'clock in the evening, play for 15 minutes, 10 minutes off, 15 minutes, 10 minutes off, 8 times.
When you were 14?
Yeah, and I'd have blood on my, and I had to play hard because there were no mics. I played everything in octaves because that's the only way you could ever hear.
Go through.
And in those days, my aim was pretty good. Now, if I did it, I'd probably be missing it. I don't play vibes anymore. Anyway, but yeah, I soloed a lot because I realized that the trumpet players needed to rest their chops, man. We would finish at like 10 to 5 in the morning. And even still, there would be some drunken fools like, hey, man, where you going? More. Hey, man, come on. The party just started. We want to dance. You know, I said, I'll go home, get some sleep. But I learned a lot. And the thing is, I watched the drummers, and it wasn't drum set. It was several drummers creating this groove, this cushion layer of drumming. And it struck me that they were improvising like jazz musicians did. I knew that already, you know, but it was danceable. Everybody dancing to it. So I asked them, how do you do that, man? You know, that was a mystery to me, you know. And they said, oh, it's the clave, man. Don't you know about the clave? I said, no, I'm a 14-year-old white kid. What does that mean? And they explained to me, you know, we got the 2-3, and the 3-2, Then I started hearing that, and I realized that they had this underlying structure that they were all so comfortable with.
Yeah, that's scary. Yeah.
That they could play anything on it, and that's where I began my whole teaching thing, which is resolution point meditations. That's what I tell young drummers or young musicians, not just drummers, to be able to master each part in the bar. You want to use. Oh, and then I asked another good question that actually further led to it, because they showed me the clave, and then I could tell now if we were in a 2-3 or a 3-2. I understood. I could hear the difference, and I said, well, is there one hit that's the most important? I said, because that's 5 hits in 2 bars.
Yeah.
They said, oh, sí, seguro. But they didn't even go to music school, so they didn't know how to say and of 2.
Yeah,
but they just sang it. They said, yeah, 2-3, I said, oh, it's the and of 2. So then I realized that you could reduce multi-hit clave down to single, and all you really need is 1 hit to have that element of repetition. Yeah. So the dancers feel like the groove is still there, but then you can learn to improvise and get more creative within that. See? And that was a very important lesson, you know. So I took it a step further too, because I realized I wasn't going to be just playing Latin music, although I love it. So I had to master every part of the bar, not just the clave. Clave is very important.
Sure.
But, you know, I had to, everyone, 1, the hand of 1, the 2, the hand of 3, the 4, hand of what first bar, second bar makes it different. And so I did that, you know, made, you know, basically it's just thematic playing. It's just theme and variation, but from a rhythm standpoint.
Yeah, makes sense. But we're talking like 1962 or 3, right? In this case.
Yeah, probably something like that. Yeah, probably something like that.
Did you already at that time play like jazz professional gigs also, like, or just like you started with salsa? And because we're talking about New York, like early
professional gigs.
I mean, like, you know, like gigs.
I played those Latin guys. I think I used to make $15.
Well, come on, that's a lot for those guys.
Yeah, for 8 sets.
yeah, okay, that's different. Yeah, okay.
No, but I love playing, man. It was worth it.
Yeah.
Characters, man. Puerto Ricans, characters, man. Tisziji, Puerto Ricans, and characters, man. Great characters, and some great musicians from that culture.
Definitely.
Giovanni is the baddest cungero I ever heard. That's who make those. That's his model cungas that I have.
I saw Giovanni 2 times live, and I was just like, I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, he's
you know, it was just like 7 people playing. And
it's like mastery on another level, man.
Yeah.
I've been watching a lot of his YouTube clips, and I talked to him the other day too. He's a deep cat too. Besides, you know, some people are great musicians, but not necessarily outside the music. They may not have that much to offer, but he's a very deep cat to me. You know, spiritual cat, very wise.
Yeah.
They're not all great, as you probably know by speaking to all these musicians, that not all great players are necessarily great people or.
Yeah, different people. Yeah.
Yeah,
we're,
but
we're all,
but they could be very talented. There's a lot of talented people who are not particularly nice people
Sure.
or necessarily smart in other ways, but they have a certain talent, you know.
Sure, definitely.
Anyway, yeah, Giovanni, beautiful, beautiful cat, very inspiring.
Yeah.
There's some clips I watched with him and Shangito playing duo.
Yeah.
Congas, that's like, wow. And it's so free too. That's
It's
a
amazing.
beautiful. I love the freedom which they play. You know, yeah, master.
Such a player. Yeah.
Yeah, hand drum. I'm just a beginner hand drummer, but I love it. I already love it, man. I just love it.
Oh, come on, you sound amazing, man. It's just like.
Oh, I'm getting better. You know, I do it
Yeah.
now more than I play the other drum.
Yeah.
It's direct, man. Now I feel it's a stick. Like, what is this? Why do I have this thing in my hand? You know, it's like between me and the drum. What? And now I have to control this thing. Oh, whereas with my hand, they just do. You know, it's like one thing to control. It's like, because I'm still learning how to get the slap sound. There's a bunch of sounds. When I hear him play, you know, the range of tones is huge.
The pitch is like changing all the time.
Huge, you know, and I'm really more at the beginning of it, but I'm getting different sounds, just not as many as those guys, you know.
Yeah.
And also the strength in their hands, you know, is amazing, you know.
Amazing, yeah.
So I'm working on it.
I wanted to ask you about you know, I kind of mentioned the '60s, and I mentioned Coltrane before. Did you ever see Coltrane live, like on gigs, or?
Hundreds of times.
Really?
Hundreds of times. When Train was playing, I used to go every night. Sometimes I go like, and in those days, people played like 6 nights, nights a week. Usually, they take a Monday off. Usually, it was usually Tuesday to Sunday. That was the usual deal at clubs. Yeah, I used to go pretty much every night. I remember one time I went to Birdland, and he played. The first set was like a 2 hours, one set, and it was so intense. I usually stayed till the end. I just said I can't hear anymore, but I was blown away, and I literally walked home. I would get on the subway, or if I was really lazy or something, I'd take a cab. Wasn't that much, but I just was so. The music was so affected me that I walked home like over 50 blocks in the rain, in the pouring rain, and I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
That was one time, but usually I would stay for the whole thing. I saw him at the Half Note. I saw him at Birdland. I saw him at the Fillmore East. You know, Bill Graham had the Fillmore West, which was a rock, but he would also mix jazz people with them. And then he had the Fillmore East. And I saw, this was late period Train. He had Rashid was playing with him, I think Alice. He had a bunch of people he'd just taken off the street playing percussion, and it was just a kindness because they weren't really great musicians, but it didn't matter. He just made them part of this beautiful community of, I saw Train a lot, man. The first time was, and I was just telling this story to another person. It was probably 1961.
Wow.
And it was at the Town Hall, I think, in New York. It was either Carnegie or Town Hall, one of the two famous big halls in New York. Well, now there's a few others, but at that time. And I remember because I was just a kid, I bought the cheapest ticket, and I was sitting in the very last row of this. But the sound was good. It's a classical place, you know. Yeah. And the concert was Thelonious Monk's group with Charlie Rouse was playing. I think Frankie Dunlap was on drum. Sonny Rollins' group, which had Paul Bley, Henry Grimes, and Roy McCurdy. That was
Henry
beautiful.
Grimes, really? Wow,
Henry Grimes and Paul Bley, man, you know.
Yeah, what a killer.
Yeah, and Sonny came out with a white tuxedo and a mohawk. And this is before Mohawk, the English punk band started using Mohawk, right? And it was very unusual, and they played great, I'm sure. But then Train came out and changed my life, and that was very early Train. He had just recorded My Favorite Things on Atlantic, the first version of that, and his band was Elvin McCoy and Steve Davis. Wasn't Jimmy Garrison?
Oh wow!
Jimmy joined slightly thereafter, I think. So that was the group, and that was different than anything I ever heard. And I did recognize a spiritual quality that was unique to me. The other stuff was great. I mean, everything has a spiritual component, everything. But it was more about just about the music itself. With Train, I felt, and I was too young to understand what it was, but I felt it immediately. And because I had that exposure to Train, and it affected me the way it did, that was what prepared me for meeting Tisziji, which has been the most important thing in my life.
Yeah, this is what
it was like training for Tisziji.
It's almost what I wanted to tell you. Like when I listened to what you did with John Medeski and Tisziji, like it's basically like the spirit of Coltrane's music is there. Like even when I listen to Tisziji, it's like Coltrane on guitar for me because the lines he plays and But what you mentioned now, it's really like the spirit of this record, like Wise One and Lonnie Slam and all the other tunes, Alabama, I think you play. It's just like, wow, man. It's
well, the
so
emotional component, the church component, but in fact, there's no Coltrane licks in Tisziji.
No. But it's just like
the spirit. The spirit is similar.
Yeah.
But I've studied this a lot because Train was very important to me. Among the jazz cats, he was the most important one to me, and Tisziji is just the most important being in my life, and also is alive. So we still have more music. We're still doing more.
Yeah.
We got a bunch coming, including another one with Billy Hart called Ghost Strings. That's amazing. A very bluesy record. But anyway, here's the big difference that I hear from Coltrane and Tisziji. Psychic difference. But you're correct. There is a spirit in the spirit. They're the closest. The only one I could say close to Tisziji is Train. The only one that I heard that's close to Train is Tisziji. Pharaoh as well, maybe.
Pharaoh, yeah, okay, yeah, sure.
But it's interesting that Tisziji played with Pharaoh a lot.
Yeah,
Tisziji
I know.
used to be in Pharaoh's band. But anyway,
Divine Radiance, man. That's the first time I heard Tisziji, man. That's record.
Man, that's starting way out there. Yeah. Yeah, with Rashid on that one.
Yeah,
too.
Rashid is killing it.
But here's the thing, and you know, this is what I perceive is that Coltrane was the sound of searching. I felt him always searching, basically for God, for spirit, for enlightenment, for satori, and trying to do it through the music, trying to get through the music. When I hear Tisziji, there's no searching. It's already found. And his thing was the spirit first, before the music, which is why he didn't make a career out of music. See? He's written more books than his record. The books are
sure.
And he's a person you come to for healing, for spiritual healing. He's made himself available and turned down all these opportunities, musical opportunities. Including Pharaoh wanted him to tour, Miles wanted him to be in his band. He just said no all the time. So that's the difference, main difference. Where I hear in Train, I hear this superhuman search, and with Tisziji, it's already there. There's no search. I'm not saying it's better musically, especially because Train was a virtuoso who used to play 20 hours a day. Tisziji picks up his guitar 3 times a year. He don't play the guitar. There's no music going on in his house. So to play that way, man, it's even more miraculous,
That's scary.
But it's on a spiritual level. Yeah, he's already found. That's the sound of found.
Yeah, it's beautiful. You've done you guys done so many records. I've listened. I have like a couple of his records, and I was like, man, I think I have a lot. Then I checked, like when you told me you've done so much in the last few years, and I went to listen, and I was like, well, I don't have really a lot, And I listened.
No, I think he's in the 70s now.
Yeah,
and some of the ones.
Incredible.
Yeah, I think the 3 most powerful ones, man, to me, that have me on it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the best stuff has Rashid Ali on the drum.
Well,
who is in my top 3 drummers of all time is Rashid Ali.
With Marilyn Crispell, that one, The Paradox of Independence, man, I love that one.
How's Independence?
I think it's live recording, man. It's killing you. That song Gratitude, if you know, like on it, it's on that record. I listened to it yesterday.
Okay, am I on that one? I forget the title.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
Okay, really. You're right. There's another one that I was just checking again too, called The Paradox of Perfection. That's another one with Medeski,
yeah.
And 2 drummers with me and Sadubov. Yes, it's this one. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I was saying, for me, the ones are, it's the nebulas.
Yeah,
There's,
yeah.
Alpha Nebula,
Yeah.
and then Omega Nebula, and then
That's like
the
those,
last one, Parasamgati, which means gone beyond gone. And we just finished the remix of that. We've improved the mix of that.
Oh, wow.
And that one, man. So those three are, for me, are like, they're superhuman, man. And I almost feel like, if nothing else, just being part of those was enough reason to live a life, you know.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah.
If I do nothing else in life, the fact that I've done that means, you know, I was worth my little, my space that I'm taking up in this overpopulated planet, you know.
True. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
well, it's beautiful. Every record you guys did together, it's just
should
also the
hear-
one with Lou Soloff, you know, with the trumpet.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that was special too, because Lou really loved Tisziji, and also he was very close with Paul Schaefer.
Yeah.
So that had a lot of, well, that's all. Hey man, crazy
Sounds of
Jews.
Soundlessness. Yeah.
Tisziji calls us the Hebrews.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Lou
No.
was a Hebrew, man, and boy, he could play some trumpet.
Oh man, one of the best.
Lou is
Yes.
you know, was so drum aware. You know, as a drummer, I'm very aware who is drum aware.
Yeah.
You know, you play with certain musicians, and I notice they're not really hearing what I'm doing. They're not that
Yeah,
aware
sure.
of the drums, you know, and that's not less fun to play with. But then there's some people who are like 100% aware of the drums. Lou is like that, like really loves the drums, man,
Yeah.
and listens to the drums and plays off of the drums, because that's what great horn or guitar should do. You play off of the drum. The
Yeah,
drum
definitely.
is your bed, is your comfort, you know, like your cushion, let's say.
Yeah.
Magic carpet to
Well,
take
for me,
you
the
ride.
most important instrument always the drums. You know, it's
Yeah,
like,
the music is only going to be as good as the drummer.
yeah, true.
Any
True.
great record that you ever heard has a great drummer on it, or several.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And horn players do their best work when they have the greatest drummer.
Yep. True.
You know, I was very close with Rahsan Roland Kirk,
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
and he made a lot of great records because he was great. He's one of the all-time, you know, he's one of the greatest. But the two favorite ones for me are Rip Rig and Panic with Elvin,
Yeah.
and then the other one that he's not the leader, but he's featured is Out of the Afternoon, Roy Haynes.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's like 1961 or 62.
I don't know the date, but yeah, it was mid '60s. Yeah, I knew
Yeah.
him during that time. I knew when he so for me the two best is with Elvin and Roy Haynes. It's not a coincidence.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, Pete LaRocque, you know, the best Joe Henderson I ever heard, and he's always great. You know, he's
Yeah,
Joe Henderson, high level. Was Basra, Pete LaRocque.
Yeah. Pete, such an underrated drummer, man. Like really.
Well, he's in my top 5, man, of
Yeah.
all time. And
Yeah.
and every one of them played with Coltrane, so that's not a coincidence either. Because Train's ear for drummers was the highest.
Yeah.
He was such a rhythm master. You know, you could tell Coltrane was such a great drummer. He's like drumming with notes, and emotion too. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Definitely.
Now, anybody who's great in melody is by definition a great drummer,
Yeah.
because melody is all about timing.
Definitely. Yeah.
Tisziji was a drum prodigy. Did you know that before
No,
he played guitar?
No.
In fact, right now, I know Tisziji well enough that if you said to him, man, you're a great guitar player, he said, I don't play the guitar. I don't know anything about a guitar, man. I never took a lesson. I don't know anything about the guitar. But if you call him a drummer, he said, yeah, I'm a drummer. Still. But he was a Afro-Rican cungero prodigy. Bapu. When he was 5 years old, he was playing 5 congas. He used to play 11 hours straight, go into trance. And he was known as a genius on the drums. People came to, in fact, some of the great cats like Ray Barretto's band and Mongo Santa Maria band came to see this little kid because they heard there's this little kid in Brooklyn that's a prodigy on the congas.
Wow, man.
So he started at that level, you know, with the drums. And I've
Did
never
you already
played-
know him back then? Like, did you ever?
No,
Okay.
I didn't know him.
Yeah.
He knew me before I knew him. And
Yeah.
knowing Tisziji, that's not a surprise. He's always going to be ahead of me, you know. He saw me at the Vanguard with Larry Coryell.
Oh yeah.
He came to see Coryell. He'd just gotten out of the army, and he wanted to see Coryell. The Coryell is the first great guitar player I played with. I played with many great guitar players.
Oh man, you played on some of my favorite records of guitar, so you know.
Yeah, well, I'm lucky. I played with some good ones, you know, great ones. Frizzell, I love Frizzell. Metheny, of course, and all of these guys.
Yeah.
Mike Stern, badass guitar player too. But anyway, Coryell, one of the best and most wide in terms of what he would do. He was actually the first free player I ever heard, was Coryell. He was also a great rock player, and he sang his ass off and blues, anything. But anyhow, Tisziji said he came to see Coryell at the Vanguard, probably in the 60s. He said he didn't remember the bass, but it might have been Miroslav, I'm not sure. But anyway, I'm sure it was somebody good, really good. And he said, yeah, he remembered seeing me. So he and then it was only years later that I got to meet him, you know.
Wow.
And you know what's funny too is he came to see Larry, and after the show he just came up to say hello and pay his respects, you know, say, man, you were great, I really enjoyed it. It was a blessing to hear you play. And Larry looked at him like, you're a great guitar player. And Tisziji said, no, I'm a beginner. You're a great guitar player. He said, no, you are, I can tell. Tisziji said, okay, thank you, you know. And years later, he ran into Larry, like 10 years later or 15, somewhere. And he reminded Larry of that he said, yeah, you told me I was a great guitar player, but I had just beginning to play the guitar. He said, and Larry said, yeah, well, I was taking a lot of LSD in those days, so I was psychic. You know, I was psychic.
Man, that's funny.
Coryell's a funny cat, but he saw something in Tisziji. And I'm sure even as a beginner, Tisziji was probably great. But he started as a drummer, you know. He didn't play guitar until later, and even now he hardly plays it, like a couple of times a year.
Amazing. Yeah.
Plus, his hand was severely injured, which is why it's almost impossible for him to play chords.
Yeah, he's playing more. That's why I'm reminded of Coltrane, because he's playing single lines more or less, right? So.
Well, yeah, or a horn. Yeah, definitely a voice.
Horn.
There's more breath in his guitar playing than most horn players, actually.
Yeah.
But his left hand was. He got thrown through a plate glass window when he was 5 years old, and it severed the nerve, the artery. In fact, he almost died on the street. He was bleeding out on the street, and he was going to die right there. And a guy came by in a taxi, saw this scene. He was dying, and his mom is screaming, "Oh, my baby!" You know. And this guy was ex-military. He was a soldier. He got out of the cab, and he took off his belt. And he tied a tourniquet. He ripped off part of his shirt. He tied the belt really tight to slow down the bleeding, just in time that he saved his life. So when he got to the hospital, they were able to save him.
Yeah. Wow.
Which is why later Tisziji said, so of course I had to join the military to pay back my karmic debt.
The dues, yeah.
And he did some serious training in the military, like serious training.
Wow.
Yeah. Anyhow.
Yeah.
But he's a drummer first, you know.
Amazing. Yeah.
I tell everybody should play drums. I can see from the back you're a guitar player.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but I hope you're playing some drums too, Samo.
I'm trying.
Well, we're all trying, but you're doing it, right? You're playing drums.
My favorite part. I wanted to be a drummer when I was a kid, but we lived in a small house, you know. So my parents were like, no. So I made like cans, you know, like for spaghetti cooking and stuff. And I remember being under the sink, like playing with.
Okay, well, good, but you're still doing it, right?
I try, yeah. I mean, you know,
don't try. Just do it, man.
Yeah, I wouldn't call myself a drummer. That would be like an insult to actual drummers. So you know.
No. Listen, do you respect me, Ra-Kalam? You respect me, right?
Sure.
I know that. I'm telling you, giving you some advice from an elder. Never say that you're not a drummer. From this day on.
Okay.
You are a drummer, a drum person, a rhythm person.
Oh, I love rhythm.
Now, you can say I'm a beginner drummer. That's okay. I feel like a beginner, you know. So we're the same there. But no, you never want to separate yourself and say, no, that's not me. That's not good for you. You're still a young man.
True. Yeah.
So, and every day pick up one drum. It could be a hand drum. It could be a waste paper basket upside down, or like you say, or a pot. Or a pan. I got this nice tea kettle that when you
that's the
leave
best
a little
sound,
water,
man.
it
I
goes
love
like
this sound.
it bends. And I love to, it's like, why the guitar players, you're the only one that bend notes. You saw me playing my talking drum.
Yeah, sure.
I got a big talking drum upstairs. I'm always using it. I love to bend, boing,
Yeah, I
so
love it.
do every day. But let me tell you something about the drums. It's the easiest instrument. It's the easiest because it's the only one that's completely direct. In other words, if I sing something like a melody, ba ba da dee ba doo doo ba, and somebody gives me a guitar or a cello, I don't know how to get that.
Yeah.
I got to learn a whole lot of stuff to be able to play on the drum.
But you can do ta, pa, pa, do, ka, ta. Yeah, sure.
Oh, yeah, but if you sing it like that, it's not going to sound that good.
Yeah.
So you have to sing it how you want it. If you sang, get up, do do.
Yeah.
Da 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 da. Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, it's close. It's not exactly, but it's close. See.
Yeah.
So,
I know what you mean.
Very close, right? And it's direct. And I don't even know what my hands are doing. Later, I can look at it and say, I mean, certain things are obvious on the drum. If you want the low tone, you go for more the middle.
Sure.
If you want the high tone, you go more to the edge, the rim shot. And if you want to do a line, you might have to go something like this. Whoa, now I'm using fingers because I want it to sound thinner. I want to sound fatter like a bass. I use the whole hand. Right?
Yeah.
Your hand does it automatically.
Yeah.
So, to practice drumming, all you have to do is sing it.
Yeah.
And then you get a drum and test it out and see if you're getting what you sing.
Yeah.
So if it's not sounding good, it's because what you're singing isn't that good.
True, bro. Yeah. Sure. Sure.
And you can work on your singing any time of the day, man. You could be in the
true.
shower, or you'd be sweeping the floor, or anything.
That's true.
So
That's
you can
true.
always practice the drum. You don't even worry about apartment or neighbors.
Sure. That's true.
That's what I used to do at school because I hated school. And I used to make a deal with most of the teachers. And usually they'd go along with it because otherwise I'd cause a lot of trouble, more trouble than they wanted, right? I was a rebel spirit in those days, and so I used to sit in the back of the class and I would be like, you leave me alone, I will leave you alone. And they say, okay. So I'm in the back of the class and whatever they were studying, I'd be in the back going, working on songs, working on grooves. I got to work on my 6/8. I'd be like, working on resolution point, working on clave, working on the funk. And maybe, there's this one beat that I want to, and I would just be in the different, whatever the material, I would just hear some material and keep singing it, air drum, improvise on it. Again, take a form, a musical form, whatever, it could be a 2-bar form, it could be a whole song, find the resolution points and then improvise on it. That's what I was doing. But just sitting at my desk. Sometimes they'd have these hollow desks at school because you're supposed to put your books in there.
Right?
Inside, right? Yeah. And so I would take all the books out, throw them on the floor, and that was a nice drum because it's hollow. Anything hollow is going to sound good, right?
Yeah, sure. That's amazing. Yeah, so beautiful. But can I ask you something? Like you
so that's a free lesson.
I know. I'm so man. I'm like. I'm embracing all this. So
yeah. So if you want to send me some money on PayPal, I'll accept. No, I'm kidding you.
No, come on. I would. if you have some albums I don't have on CDs, I gladly buy them, so, or vinyl. So.
I was going to send you some stuff, but you're saying it's difficult, expensive by mail to. What country are you in again?
I'm in Slovenia.
Slovenia, yeah.
Yeah.
Slovenia.
You ever played in Slovenia, actually, or?
You know, my memory is far from, but I seem to
Former
remember.
Yugoslavia.
Oh, okay. Oh, Slovenia. I see. Maybe not. Is there a club there, a jazz club called Philly Joe's?
No.
Okay. All right. I don't think so.
Oh,
years in the old days and years
maybe
ago,
Gary
I played in Yugoslavia, and then later I did this drumming birds thing in what was Yugoslavia.
With Billy, right?
Yeah. With Billy Martin.
Yeah.
Right. And then for most of them with Nene, a great Brazilian drummer. We played in Yugoslavia. In fact, I think we got stranded, or Billy got stranded in Yugoslavia, but he didn't mind because he found this beautiful Yugoslavian girl and he was shacking up. So, but I felt like, because I had to go back and tell his dad, I was supposed to be taking care of him because he's, younger than me.
I know, Billy told me, that he was like, I don't know, 17.
I was so embarrassed. I hate to tell you, Alan, his dad, man, Billy is stuck there without his passport. But he made it home eventually. And he was actually grooving because he was with some young lady who I remember was very beautiful, Ladies love Billy,
Yeah. But speaking of Billy, I saw that he released this. I think it was for a long time, I thought, your first record was like the Bittersuite in the Ozone thing that you did. But then Billy released that Love Animal thing from 1968. And
right, that was the first one, but didn't come out at the time, though.
But it's one of the really rare appearances of Keith also as a sideman in a way, and with Larry.
No, Keith played with Cannonball. Keith played with Miles.
But with Charles, and
Charles Lloyd,
But still,
he played with some people.
Not so, like with. I didn't know you guys did something together, but like, how did that group happen? Actually,
let me tell you something. He played his ass off on "Smoke It's in Your Eyes." That's some of his best playing, and he loved Jim Pepper.
Yeah, I love Jim Pepper, man. Yeah.
Yeah, well, me too. Pepper's in my top 4 saxophone players of all time. But yeah, Keith he seemed to like me. I even wound up doing a week with him and Charlie Hayden. That he had a trio with Paul Motion.
Seriously.
And one of his records that at the time, it was one of my favorite of Keith's records. It was called "Life Between the Exit Signs."
Yeah,
you ever heard that one?
Sure.
It's a good record.
Sure, with Paul, right? No, yeah.
With Paul Motion and Charlie Hayden. It's a trio record. It's very free, very open. And there's a tune on there, I think, called Church Dreams or something. I remember that was, I like that record. Anyway, they had a great trio. And he was doing a week at this club in New York called the Domicile. It was on St. Mark's Place. Really funky place. Obviously, he would never play someplace like that now. It'd be like a big concert hall or something, but this is the early days, and it was with Charlie and Keith, and Paul got sick. Paul couldn't do the gig. I don't know what happened to Paul, so he called me at the last minute, and I got to play a week with them, and that was hard because my internal hearing wasn't as good then as it is now. They were playing standards, but they were so free that I didn't know. I was lost from the first note. I had no idea. They say, I love you. I say, yeah, I know that. And I said, 1, 2, 1, 2. And I'm expecting, I love you. And instead they be, you know that? Yeah. They go, okay, I love you. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And I said, man, what happened to ink? What happened to that? It was like from the first note. Gone, man. And I thought, man, I really didn't know what I was doing, and I kind of struggled for that week, but I did learn something, which is to at least look like I knew what I was doing. I still didn't know, but I had a better look on my face. For the first couple of days, I was looking like what's going on? I'm lost. And after a while, I said, yeah, I know, but I didn't know, but I pretended that I knew, and that did seem to work better.
Wow. Amazing.
But we did another gig. I did a few things with Keith, He used to have a Porsche. We used to drive around Western New Jersey. He liked to drive fast and with his Porsche. He was a good cat, but, not always. Later when we were on tour with him, he got a little bit,
Yeah.
I'm not really feeling all this stuff of getting crazy if somebody coughs or all this stuff, you know. To me, it's a little too, you know.
Yeah, sure.
But you know, he's a prodigy, and
Yeah.
prodigies have it rough, man. You know, most of I only know a few, but the few prodigies I have are all a little bit, you know.
Yeah. Sure.
You can imagine somebody, you know, you're 5 years old and you're already better than anybody else. That's like
That's scary.
Yeah. It's got to mess with your head a little bit, you know.
That is scary.
But Keith was great on any instrument, man. You know, he did a record that I actually really liked. It got panned in Downbeat, I think, because it wasn't what they were expecting. But I love that record. It was like a folk record, folk music. And he was all his own songs. He was singing and playing guitar.
Really? I don't know.
Yeah, Keith Jarrett. And he played good guitar, and he wrote these beautiful songs. There was a song on there called like Sioux City Sue. And it was kind of like, you know, it was Keith, but it was in the bag of like Tim Hardin or Jackson Brown, one of those great singer-songwriters, you know.
I love those guys, yeah.
Yeah, I love Tim Hardin, man. We used to play opposite. And he wrote some beautiful songs, man.
Yeah.
Soulful cat, kind of a messed up dude. He died young with drugs and alcohol, you know. But did play opposite him with the Free Spirits, and I thought he was beautiful. Like, I thought he was really great. Anyway, you know, Keith did an album like that. And on Love Animal, the one you're referring to, he played saxophone too. He played
soprano.
Yeah, right next to Pepper, and he sounds great with Jim Pepper, like, you know.
Man, Jim Pepper, such a. How did you meet Jim? I mean, I love Jim, like coming and going. That's one of my top, I don't know, 10 records. That is such a beautiful sound. And
oh yeah, man, Pepper's powwow. But anyway, well, you know. I met him quite young, but I don't remember the first time. But I used to have a loft. Oh, I think I know how I met him. I had a loft on the Bowery, which is where the homeless people are, bums, right, off of Canal Street, which on the other side of Canal Street is Chinatown. So.
Yeah.
But in those days, man, you know what the rent for this loft was? $52 a month.
Yeah, I wanted to say 60.
yeah, that would have been a high price play. Yeah. And I had a roommate, so my share was like $26 a month, you know.
That's bizarre.
And I lived on brown rice, which was 22 cents a pound, maybe a can of tuna for some protein, little tamari sauce, and I was good to go. LSD, and that was about it, man, you know. Brown rice, LSD, and $26 a month. And the LSD was strong in those days too. And we had this place, and my roommate was a pianist named Mike Grant. He had a brother, Tom Grant, who was also a pianist, who played on some of Pepper's records, I think, too. But he was from Portland, which is where Pepper was from.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, Pepper. Well, originally he's people from Oklahoma. He's Native American, but he grew up in Portland, Oregon, and Mike Grant was from Portland. That was my roommate. I don't know how I met Mike Grant, but we were living together on the Bowery. And Pepper knew Mike Grant, so he came over to play. A lot of people came over to play.
Okay.
And the first time I heard Jim Pepper, he was playing this beautiful jazz ballad. And I said, and he sounded to me like as good as Coltrane, maybe like 50s Coltrane, like that kind of playing, and lyrical, but with these sheets of sound kind of thing. And the next time I heard him playing, he was playing just screaming like a banshee into the wall. He was playing into the corner, so the sound, he was just like, and I at that point was kind of a jazz snob in a way, because I looked down on the avant-garde a little bit, because it sounded to me like they were just screaming, like they didn't really know music, you know. But then I heard Pepper play this beautiful ballad. Then I heard him screaming. I said, "Oh, I better listen to this more carefully." And then I started hearing the beauty in the screams and how much music was in that screaming. And I could tell the difference. The real players like Pharoah, like Pepper, like Albert Ayler had this beautiful scream, so beautiful. And some of them were fake. There were some avant-garde guys who were kind of faking, you know. But I could tell that it was great. And I also kind of looked down on the rock and rollers, like, oh, they don't know real music, and they're not real music. And Coryell opened me to that, because the first time I heard Coryell, he was playing jazz at like West Montgomery level. And the next time I heard him, he was playing some Oop-Poop-a-Doob and singing some Stones tune or Bob Dylan. And he knew all the old blues and R&B and playing it so well. And I thought, oh, that's great music too. And then so I became a fan of the band and the Beatles and the Stones, and of course all the black, Aretha and Otis Redding and all that shit, So and rock in general, man. I played opposite the Cream in
really?
West, for a whole week, and I became fans of them. I really, so certainly Hendrix, of course, I love Hendrix. I saw him play live. In fact, Hendrix sat in with the Free Spirits one time.
No, seriously?
Yes,
wow.
and he was so intimidated by Coryell that he didn't play guitar. He played bass.
Oh man.
He sounded great on bass too.
Sure.
But Coryell was playing some shit in them days, and he was doing a lot of stuff that Hendrix got credit for later. But I don't know, maybe he was doing it, but I didn't know about it because he wasn't famous. But all that feedback and like humping the amp with the guitar, Coryell was doing that shit. Wow. Plus, he had all this jazz beauty, which I think was Hendrix probably didn't have. Classically trained too, So Hendrix was actually kind of intimidated, and and Larry was ready to go because Hendrix, all right, I'm gonna, and he played bass, but he did play with us. He was very beautiful, shy. He came in with a girl who was dressed like a sheep herder, except with cleavage, like little Bo Peep with the stick with the the people who herd the sheep, with a bonnet on her head and everything, but with tits hanging out, that's Hendrix. And I think he had like a purple Lamborghini parked outside too,
Oh man.
So, anyway, Coryell was the first really great guitar player that I ever played with, and so I met Pepper, I think, through Mike Grant probably, and then Coryell would come over, and then out of that came the Free Spirits, Chris Hills and Coryell, Columbus Baker, other guitar player, the rhythm guitar player.
That's amazing.
Who also was a great songwriter, a great lyricist. So a lot of our lyrics was Chip Baker, although Larry wrote beautiful songs too. Also a great lyricist, great singer. I was there when Pepper wrote Wichitaito.
Really? Oh, I love that song.
And that was actually co-written by Coryell.
How did that happen? You remember? Or?
Yeah, they were just sitting around, and Pepper had this idea, and Coryell helped him find the chords.
Oh wow!
That's a 6-bar composition.
I love the tune.
Do boo do. We are.
Yeah.
Wichita, give me Ranika. We used to play that at pretty much every Free Spirits gig. That was kind of our anthem.
Yeah.
People always loved that song.
Yeah.
Free Spirits, man. First jazz rock band.
Yeah.
Not that that means anything, but it just happens to be true. I think it's true, actually. Yeah.
Man.
There was a few bands that came after us close, but I think we were the first that I heard. Jeremy Steig had a band called Jeremy and the Satyrs. And then also there was another one with Mike Maneri and Warren Bernhardt that was kind of an early jazz rock thing.
Amazing.
And then there was some commercial shit that came later too, like Blood, Sweat, and Tears and stuff. And then Miles was later. But with Free Spirits, we go back like 65, I think.
Wow, okay, that's really early, yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yeah, we were trying to be rock stars. Man, I'm so glad that never happened. I can't tell you, man, I dodged that bullet. Man. But I think we knew even then that it was shark infested waters, and we rebelled just enough that we weren't going to become famous, because we wouldn't play by the rules,
Yeah,
we wouldn't let them turn us into product,
Yeah.
Or just product, product first.
Yeah.
Anyway, but we could have been, because Coryell had that kind of charisma.
Yeah.
And he was lead guitar like badass as anybody, singing his ass off, super handsome. And we could have done it, but I'm glad it didn't happen, man. I think I think we were all ambivalent about it, even though we were kind of trying. It seemed like a good idea to make some money, you know.
Yeah, but you guys made then so much music, so much other great, fantastic music, you know, together and on your own that it's just, in a way, it's good that you didn't make it because I don't know what would happen maybe. Or I don't know.
I think so too. Definitely, I think
know.
it's very good that we didn't make it. I don't think that was. I think, yeah, I feel like my position now, which is very much out of the scene, works to my advantage to do what I want to do, which is not play the same thing twice, man. And what I want to do is not know what I'm going to play. When you become a working successful, you need to kind of give the people what they expect.
The same set list almost or stuff.
Yeah.
Like that.
Well, yeah. Like with Billy Martin, they got to play the funk because they got the people used to hearing and loving that. Billy Martin was one of the few drummers who could play a samba school on the drum set by himself.
I talked
one
to
of the
Billy.
One of the early records they do that, and then for many years after, I never heard that rhythm because that's not the jam band rhythm.
Yeah.
I heard them once do a whole concert free, like rubato, but it was a small joint, and they did it purposely to experiment. And I noticed that the audience, they was packed because they loved them, the people loved them, but they weren't really listening. They were talking, they weren't that enthused. And then Medeski went into one of those like Muddy Waters kind of boot, and the whole crowd went insane, right? But for when they were playing the free shit, which was much more interesting to me, people weren't even listening. So if they did too much of it, they would probably lose their audience. So that becomes an anchor to hold you down. But that's why for Medeski in particular, I don't know. Billy is he's doing a lot more free music now.
Yeah, Billy's playing a lot of free stuff. Yeah.
More free. He's evolved in that way, which makes sense. Medeski gets to play with Tisziji once in a while. So that
I saw that. So many records they did,
fills that spot for him,
Yeah.
There's another one that I really like called The Songs of Soundlessness.
Yeah, I think that's with Lou Soloff and John Medeski.
No, that's a quartet date with David Fink.
With David Fink on bass. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Songs of Soundlessness. Quartet.
Yeah. Checked it out, yeah. Incredible stuff.
There's another one that came out recently called Co-Emerging Fullness with that same instrumentation with Medeski, David Fink and myself, Tisziji. And that one sounds like almost like a jazz record, a classical jazz record, except turned on its head, turned upside down, like completely destroyed, but as a kind of a template.
Yeah.
And Fink adds to that because Fink is more classical studio.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And Medeski actually, because I know how he plays, he's a wild man and he's also a funk guy and he's a heavy rhythm, and he sounds more like close as he ever got to Kuhn, Bill Evans, Keith on that record. In other words, the classical side of Medeski, because he has that, but usually that's not, he's more like
doesn't come out, yeah.
He's just going nuts, which I love that anyway. He plays like a drummer too. Lam Sobo, we call him.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, we spoke about guitar players, and I heard a couple of tunes you played with Jim Hall and Steve Ball. Jim is for me one of the best. And like, how did you end up in that trio with Jim, actually, if you remember?
Well, yeah, I do remember, because the first time I went to Europe, I'm pretty sure, was when I first joined Gary Burton's band.
Sure, yeah.
And this was, the whole tour was called, Newport Jazz Goes to Europe. So it's like George Wein All Stars, man, like really heavy duties, right? And Gary Burton, at that point, was the least famous.
Man, wow.
Yeah, now it's hard to remember because he's an icon now. He's the world's greatest vibist, probably, definitely one of the top ever to play the instrument, and well known and done a lot of stuff. But in those days, he was new. He was like up and coming star, right? Kind of could tell he was going to be there, but he was just beginning as a leader, really.
That's like Lofty Fake Anagram, kind of that period.
something like that. Might
Yeah,
have been
okay.
before.
Before, wow,
yeah,
okay.
probably. No, maybe right after. Right.
Yeah.
I think we recorded that in California on the West Coast, and then we
Oh.
went to Europe next. So it was like maybe his second tour.
Okay.
And the reason I found out later, the reason that he was able to get the gig was that during on that same tour, and I'll tell you some of the musicians on there, they had this guitar workshop.
Yeah,
It was
I saw this.
six or seven world-class guitar players, but they couldn't afford to all bring their own band.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
They couldn't pay to have each one of these guys bring a band, okay? So the deal that Gary worked out was he got on the tour as a leader if he agreed to have me and Swallow accompany these guitar players. Now,
Wow.
if I remember, I don't even think he told us about it. We just were told when we got there, you got to do it. And I could be wrong about that, but it doesn't matter anyway. I didn't care. And also, I don't even think we got any extra bread for doing that. However, I got to play with Barney Kessel. I got to play with George Benson.
Really?
I got to play
wow.
I got to play. These are some of the guitar players.
Yeah.
As well as Coriel, who was there with Gary's group. Buddy Guy.
Really?
Great
With
blues
Buddy
guitar.
Guy?
Yeah,
Really?
Buddy Guy, the great blues guitar player.
Man, I love Buddy Guy.
Oh, he's killing, man. He's one of my all-time favorites.
Yeah.
And Jim Hall. So who else? It was Barney Kessel, Grant Green, Jim Hall, Buddy Guy. Oh yeah, and on some of them, Baden Powell, this great classical Brazilian guitar player. So,
Wow.
and so I got to play with pretty much all of these guys. Oh, and Elmer Snowden. Elmer Snowden played the banjo.
Okay.
Elmer Snowden, and we're talking about this in 1968, probably 67, 68, something like that. And Elmer Snowden was already 90 years old then.
Wow.
He passed like shortly thereafter. Elmer Snowden was so old that he would tell his stories like, well, back in 1919, I had a young gentleman play in my group. His name was Edward Kennedy Ellington. You may have heard of him. He's talking about Duke Ellington. He was a sideman in his band in Washington, D.C. in 1919. That's how far back he goes. But now it's 68, and he's playing banjo, and early Dixieland, when they had banjo players, right? Which is like a drum with strings, man. It's like,
the rhythm.
And he played one song, man. Because 90, he worked it down to one song, and the song only had one note, or a couple of notes. It was like it was C-Jam Blues, and he played, baba, 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 boom, boom, and his foot's pounding, but he was rocking, right? So I got to play with him. I could tell you some funny stories about that cat.
Man.
But anyway, so I got to play with all these guitar players, which to me was a great treat and a great honor, but also. I didn't feel ready. I was just kind of thrown in there with these people that were way over my head. I particularly did not want to play with Baden Powell.
Yeah.
Not because I didn't love his music, but I didn't think I could do it. At that point, I'd played no Brazilian, no samba, and I really didn't want to mess up his music. See? And I was trying to get that across. And Swallow, the only time Swallow ever got mad at me, because he's a very sweet guy. He don't get mad. Yeah, it's just not in his personality to get mad. Maybe a little, but he got he said he got mad. He said, "Man, shut up and play." He doesn't understand English. He just thinks you don't want to play with him. See?
Oh. Wow.
And so I said, okay. So I did play with him, and I'm hanging on for dear life. But I didn't mess it up too bad. I kept it. I just kept it simple, and I followed him. And but Jim Hall was very easy to play with.
Yeah.
And the other thing about Jim Hall that it was his concentration. From the first note, he was 100% in. I mean, 100% in. So and also, he tended to play very quietly, but with great intensity. And yeah, in those days, because in 1968, and I was getting into the rock thing, because I had been playing with the Free Spirits and digging the Cream and Jimi Hendrix and all this kind of stuff. So I couldn't help but do some of that.
Yeah, louder, more.
It wasn't, but I couldn't be louder because he didn't play loud.
He played so soft, yeah.
He played soft, but I started playing that kind of beat, but with brushes.
Oh,
So I was playing with brushes like but with brushes. And Jim Hall like down. Started playing like some blues,
Man.
and he got right into it, but softly.
Yeah, that's
But it
beautiful.
was very intense, but it was softly. So he followed me wherever I wanted to go. I mean, he was so attuned. It made it very easy to play with because he was so concentrated and he heard the drums so well.
Yeah.
And even then, I think I was in over my head, but I did okay. And there was one tune that survived on YouTube, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
A couple of tunes that made it on a record. There was
On a record, yeah. I think it's 2 tunes. Yeah, I've heard.
2 tunes. There's one called "Careful," which is like a 16-bar blues or something. It's Jim's tune or something.
And one standard also. I don't know which one you play, but yeah, it's like
that's the one that made it on TV.
YouTube. Yeah, I think
touch of your on YouTube. A
touch of your lips. Yeah, I think so.
Beautiful, man. And Swallow on acoustic bass. Oh man,
Back
he sounds
then,
so good, man. I was kind of heartbroken when he gave it up, but I understand it because he's, the way he plays, it's
amazing.
Perfect for the electric bass guitar as he plays, because he's so chordal and he understands inner voicings in a way that very few bass players do. So it's perfect. But I do love how he played the acoustic bass and
those early stuff.
I was lucky to play with those guitar players. Thanks to Gary Burton not being so famous. He pimped us out, so we had to play with all the guitar players, and I was happy to do it, and not only that, but Miles's band was there.
Really?
Charles Lloyd's band with Keith and Jack DeJohnette were there. Either Cecil or Ron McClure. I don't
Ron
remember.
McClure, or Cecil. Yeah.
Ron McClure. Monk's group with expanded horn section, which included Charlie Rouse, but also Phil Woods and Eddie Burt, the trombone. There's like 4 horns. Oh, Johnny Griffin was there. Sonny Stitt was there. Bill Evans was there with Eddie Gomez. Like I say, Charles with Keith. I think Dexter Gordon was there. Sonny Stitt was there. Miles was there. Herbie, Wayne Shorter, all these guys, man. Charles Lloyd. And during that week, we did a week in London before we went to the other cities. And we had Gary Burton's band was the band at Ronnie Scott's famous jazz club, right? Sure. And so all these cats who were doing the concerts would finish at 11, right? Like 8 to 11 usually, right? Concert hall thing.
Yeah.
So they would come to Ronnie Scott's to have a few beer, have a few drinks, talk story, and we were there playing. And I'm looking out in the audience and I'm seeing, Miles, Bill Evans, Sonny Stitt, Johnny Griffin, Phil Woods, Keith Jarrett, Charles Lloyd, Jack DeJohnette, man. And then I was so scared my hands the sticks would turn into snakes in my hands. I started sweating. I was like 18 years old and that's my audience. I say, oh man, I definitely didn't feel ready. Some of the rock guys would come in too. And in those days, I used to do like pantomime drum solos sometimes. I don't know why. I was a crazy guy. I would just play the air and make no sound, but you could kind of hear it if you watch me, And I started to do that during one of those late sets at Ronnie, and I hear this voice with this Cockney British saying, "Get on with it," and it was Ginger Baker.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he didn't like the silence. He didn't want to hear no silence.
I bet, yeah. Man, that's so
But yeah, it was a good experience for an 18-year-old, but I was scared, But as a guitar player, this would interest you to know is, you got all these guitar players on the road together. We're traveling together in the same city at the same time. You know who was the tightest hanging buddies of all the guitar players?
Yeah, tough one. I don't know.
Jim Hall and Buddy Guy.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Wow.
Seriously. Not what you'd expected, right?
No.
And they were an odd-looking couple, man, because, Jim Hall looks like a librarian or something, right?
Yeah.
Right? Like a milquetoast white guy, right?
Yeah,
and Buddy Guy is like Mississippi, Chicago with the conch hair and the leather coat, and he's got a flat and alligator skin boots and shit, and he's got a flask and he's hitting, and they loved each other. Like Buddy Guy loved Jim Hall and Jim Hall loved Buddy Guy. Every time Buddy Guy played, Jim Hall was right there listening. They even swapped guitarists. They said, "Hey, you play mine, let me play yours," and shit.
That's so beautiful, man.
Yeah, that was interesting, man.
Wow.
But
But did you like through Gary? You mentioned Charlie Hayden and you mentioned Steve Swallow, and then I think one of the first records I've heard you on was Bright Size Life by Pat. Did you through Gary also get hooked up with Pat then? Like,
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And for you as a drummer, like how, when I listen to Jocko on that record and you playing together, it's just incredible. Like, how was it for you back for playing with him like this? Because you sound so open yet so tight, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, he was easy to play with, Jocko. Very easy to play with, and exciting. He's inspiring, man. When you have somebody like that, he just takes the music higher. Especially in those days when he was unspoiled. He was still clean. He wasn't drinking or drugging, and his mind was very sharp. And he was in super shape as an athlete. I mean, Jocko was a serious athlete, and he was also coming out of the funk and the African groove, which was more where I was coming from.
Yeah.
And that group. A lot of times I was like the referee between Pat and Jocko. And they loved each other, I'm sure, and they were, obviously mutual respect, but they were coming from such different places,
Yeah.
And, on the first gig, see, that record doesn't really represent how we played.
Oh, really?
That's why I had a hard time listening to it for many years. I never even heard it. I think I heard it half of it once. And,
Really?
Then I listened to it later, and I said, "No, it's good. It's good. It's good. Very good.
It's incredible.
I enjoy it. I mean, I don't think I play that good, but
come on, it's
Jocko and Pat sound great. But Jocko, he would go into some funk, right? Because that's his shit, man. And the audience would go crazy. Jocko, and Pat. As soon as he did it, he would always bring it down to something really slow and quiet. And Pat's tunes had changes, like chords.
Yeah.
Some of them were 6 pages long of chords, right? Jocko, just give me an E. That's all. Just some E funk. That's all I needed to do. And he wasn't giving Jocko any space to do that, right? Because he wanted to control it, be his music, which is beautiful,
Yeah,
but Jocko was playing his music better than it ever was played, so he was elevating Pat's music because he made it even that kind of sound like danceable, funky,
Yeah.
But every time he'd funk out, like Pat would pull it. And so eventually, and Jocko was coming all the way from Florida on the Greyhound bus, sleeping on somebody's couch, to make $50 a night, gig, in Boston we play these places, Pooh's Pub, no big money or anything.
Yeah.
The Lily, not the Lily Pit, that was later. There was another club we played in Cambridge or something. But so eventually Jocko started Bogart. He would just make it go. He would just take over and make it go some funk shit. And Pat would say shit like, "Jocko, it's not a reggae, it's a waltz." and then Jocko would say shit like, because he was the king of hyperbole. Everything was the ist, I'm the greatest bass player in the world, but everything was, hyperbole. But so he said, to me, not to Pat, he said, Pat Metheny is the whitest motherfucker I ever heard, on the planet. And I said, no, he's not, Jocko. He's not. Believe me, he's good. So I was kind of like, a lot of times, like trying to bridge that divide, see. But, what a lot of people don't know is that we rehearsed all that music with Dave Holland,
Really? I didn't
because
know.
Manfred did not want Jocko. The guy from ECM did not want. He didn't want electric bass.
Oh yes.
And he didn't want a rock and roller. I guess that was. Jocko had some rep electric. He didn't want electric bass. So this is not pop music. This is serious music. This is jazz. And because Pat wasn't a big star yet, I think that's his first record as a leader. He kind of. This is your record company is telling you don't use this guy. Use this guy. He had to listen. He felt he had to listen. And so we rehearsed all that music with Dave Holland.
Wow. How was that with Dave? Like,
Well, okay, let me say
different,
this
right?
because I don't want this to go out and sound like I'm, casting,
No,
saying
no, no, no,
anything
sure,
negative
sure.
about. Listen, Dave Holland is a great bass player, and anytime I get a chance to play with Dave Holland, I'm like, thank you, Lord,
Yeah,
for giving me one of the all-time great bass players. But it was nothing like with Jocko, man. It
different
was
vibe.
it,
Yeah,
it was more intellectual, man. It was more like a formula or something. It was more like
interesting.
equations kind of shit. Whereas with Jocko, it was
Soulful more or something.
funky, man. It was just
Funky. Yeah,
alive, and it was like
yeah.
no comparison. And at that time I wasn't into the ECM vibe. I didn't get along with the guy too well. I'd had a few,
With
so I
Manfred.
wasn't
Yeah.
even. So I told Pat after the rehearsal, I said, okay, I gotta say two things. I say, if you use Dave Holland instead of Jocko, you're crazy. That's one.
Well,
And here's two. If you use Dave Holland instead of Jocko, I'm out. Get a different drummer because we should do it with Jocko, and I don't want to record with this guy anyway because I was a tough guy back in them days. I acted that way. I'm not proud of it, but I was could be that way sometimes. And Pat, to his credit, he said, "No, you're absolutely right. It's got to be Jocko." He heard it right away. There was no comparison but David is great. Don't get me wrong.
yeah, sure. No, no,
With
incredible.
Jocko, man, it was a whole other vibe, man. And so, and there's one tune on that record you would know better than me because I don't even know the title. I told you I've only listened to the thing like 3 times in my life.
Wow.
But it's a slow one, and Jocko plays the melody and takes a solo. It's kind of like
Missouri Uncompromised. No.
I think it's like Midwestern
Midwestern Night's Dream. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, it's so beautiful.
It's kind
Yeah.
of bo be bo
Yeah.
be bo
Go, go. Yeah. Oh man.
Right. And Jocko said, that melody would sound great if I doubled it. Right. And Manfred didn't want to let him do it.
Wow.
He kept saying, this is not pop music. We don't overdub. We don't produce. This is real music, which means, it's got to be all one take, no editing.
Yeah.
That's the classical attitude. Although Glenn Gould edited the shit out of his classical stuff.
Bizarre.
Yeah, you're making a record. Why not edit?
Yeah.
Why not produce? I overdub on a lot of my records, or have other people come overdub on things. I have no problem with that. You get a great sound. There's no leakage.
Sure.
And you can do several takes. And, there's advantages to it anyway. But he didn't want to do it. And they were arguing back and forth like 40 minutes, And all this time wasted. I said, man, he could have done it already, man. Let him do it. And so finally, kind of begrudgingly said, okay, but one take. If we don't get it in one take, we go on to something else. I don't want to do this, And Jocko said, okay, let me hear it once. And he played it. He's listening. His ears were so sharp. He said, I got it. And you listen to the solo. It's 2 basses. He doubled it, and it's like one gigantic bass.
Man.
And now, if you try to play along with something that's already there,
Yeah.
if it's in the pocket, if it's in the 8th note, baba do be that's
Kind of
not so
easier.
hard.
Yeah, sure.
But if it's bo be boo boo, it's kind of rubato. That's really hard, and he nailed it. And
Wow.
you hear this thick sound, and it sounds like Wagnerian bass. It was 2 Jockos, but he had to argue for 40 minutes before
Man.
they let him do it. But I'm glad he did.
Wow.
And I'm glad I made that record, and I'm glad that Pat
Yeah.
held his ground on that and had enough cojones to say no, it's got to be Jocko, even though he was a little bit scared. He didn't want to blow his deal, with ECM.
Yeah, sure.
That was a big deal for him because he was definitely dedicated to being a successful musician, and he's accomplished it many times over. But so he had to be careful.
Yeah.
Jocko was not careful. That's one thing I loved him. And spirit-wise, I felt probably closer to his vibe. I wish the music went more into the funk, into the African, into the samba. But Pat's music is great too, and it is what it is. And Pat knows what he wants. He's a great leader because he has a very definite vision of what it should be.
Definitely.
But Jocko had it. But like I say, Jocko's a funk guy. Give him some E, and he's good to go.
Yeah, sure.
That's all he needs, man. So that was an interesting group, and we did play a lot before, in around Boston. I think we played in Woodstock once too, the Joyous Lake, a few gigs, Yeah, Pat was precocious because he was great at a very young age,
Yeah, such a player.
Yeah, I'd like to do something more with him at some point. I don't know if I doubt it'll ever happen,
but that's one of the best guitar trios ever recorded for me. Like one of the best top 5 guitar trio records, if you ask me.
Well, maybe if it had a better drummer,
No, come on.
I think it's true. Somebody wrote, because when you see a YouTube, there's comments, right? And I remember somebody's comment was, first of all, there's a bunch of YouTube, which I think is also, I don't get angry. I thought it was actually made sense to me. There's a couple of people who posted that don't even mention my name.
Oh, really, man?
Yeah, and it's a trio. There's only 3 names. It's not like there's 8 people to list, So you list the most famous. It says,
No, but still.
Metheny and Jocko, right? And so obviously in the comments, some of the people said, well, you should mention Bob Moses too. He's important. And I said, oh, thank you. That's nice. The truth is, I didn't give a shit. I don't care about stuff like that. But it was interesting. And then one of the comments said that my drumming on that record is similar in a way to Paul Motion.
Yeah.
With Bill Evans. And I took that as a compliment because, first of all, I love Paul Motion. I look up to him. So if somebody's comparing me to him, that's a good thing, But also, what it was, I think, is, when you hear Bill Evans, Scott LaFaro, Paul Motion, Bill and Scotty are technical virtuosos. Paul Motion was not.
Yeah.
He's one of my all-time favorite drummers.
So this is,
but he's a sloppy drummer. He don't have Buddy Rich chops or
Tony he doesn't Williams have the chops, sure.
Or Jack DeJohnette chops or Tony Williams or these guys. And in that sense, I don't either. With Pat and Jocko are both virtuosos. No, I'm more of a sloppy drummer because I hardly play. I don't practice drums much. These guys, Metheny in the old days, I don't know if he's still like this, but he never took the guitar off his shoulder. He would walk down the hotel. He'd go to get some food, the guitar without without the right hand, just working his left hand.
Man.
He would go. He would finish a gig, and we'd all be in our room watching TV, and he'd be writing songs always. When he would work like 50 weeks a year, which is grueling touring. Yeah. He would get a week off, and he would book some gigs. That's how I wound up playing with him in Montreal with Swallow. That's a couple of tunes wound up on YouTube. Yeah. Right? All the Things You Are and everything. Yeah. He couldn't stand it. He had a week where he wasn't playing. He couldn't that's Pat. So these cats are music fanatics. I'm not like that, man. I went to Peru, man, and for 5 months. I went to Mexico for 5 months without even a drum. Just went with I had a little wooden log drum. That was it. And I went to the Mayan ruins and took mushrooms and had adventures. And I wasn't even thinking about music. I mean, I might have been thinking about it. I wasn't playing music every day or playing drum set. So I don't have that relationship. Jocko had that thing with the bass. He would take it to the beach. He's practicing the beach. He'd go for a swim, come back, practice. He was always practicing, which is why these cats are virtuosos of the highest level. See?
Yeah.
So, but I'm not saying that what I'm doing couldn't be good either, because you don't have to be a virtuoso to be great music. Yeah. You don't. One of my favorite piano players is Horace Parlan. You hip to Horace Parlan?
Sure, of course.
He plays basically with 1.5 hands, because his right hand he has no digital dexterity. He can get a couple of clusters. That's about it. So he's playing basically with one hand.
Yeah.
And he's great. His music is great. I played with him, actually. He's
really?
Great to play. Yeah. With Harold Vick, who's also in my top 4 saxophone players. I got to play with Horace Parlan. I think I played with him with Rahsan, too. I loved Horace Parlan, how he played. I think he just recently passed. I could be wrong about that. And he was living in Denmark. There's a clip of him, very old, playing with a Danish bass player, playing this ballad. It's just beautiful. basically, largely with one hand, you know.
Ra-Kalam, I just have to pee.
Oh yeah, I should go actually too because I'm supposed to be working.
But just give me a minute that we at least say goodbye or.
Okay, I'm gonna pee too, so we come back in like a minute and a half.
Okay.
And we wrap it up.
Okay.
And we can do it again if you want to.
Oh please, it's so beautiful to listen. Okay, but let's meet in one then.
Okay, I'll be back.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good time. Good timing. See, that's good timing.
Purple timing.
Yeah. Man, thanks so much. Beautiful.
So Samo, play some drums, man.
I will.
Next time we talk, I want to hear that you've been drumming, man. In fact, you can play some drum for me next time. Get a hand drum, get a dumbek or something.
I'll take the back of the guitar, and I do that sometimes. So.
That's a drum, sure. Definitely.
That's a drum, yeah.
Yeah.
Man, we haven't even started when elephants dream of music and all this stuff, which I really love.
I got to talk about Tisziji and all the records I'm doing
now,
man.
I know.
I got 27 records
I know.
So many. Have you ever heard Universal Folk Song?
No, not
One of my most important ones, man. Shamanic Soliloquies, music from a parallel dimension. That's a
Okay.
duo with
Yeah.
Liebman. You heard that one?
I think I heard that one. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, Tisziji stuff, you should definitely check out Drop Dead. And there's another one we just put on YouTube that I have physical copies too, but I'll, I got to make some more. But it's called, we just did. It's called Master of Silence.
Oh yeah, the one that you sent me. Yeah, this is amazing.
I sent you a check.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
That record is beautiful, man. Yeah, I love the ones with no piano. I think they're freer, and although the piano
it's more
is great,
open.
I love the piano, but it's more open without the piano. Yeah. All the nebulas have no piano. You know.
Yeah, I love that stuff.
Guitar,
hey, and you and
bass.
Liebman, man, that's another story. Drum Ode, and
we go way back. Well, Drum Ode is not a record that I would recommend, but.
Dr. Jazz. Dr. Jazz.